Welcome back, and welcome deeper into the shadows. If you're listening to this now, you've already crossed the quiet threshold of Part 1, the world of hidden rooms, coded messages, stolen love, and whispered betrayals. You've seen how a single person can bend the arc of history, sometimes without ever firing a shot. But tonight, as we step softly into Part 2, the story darkens, the stakes sharpen, and the betrayals cut deeper than anything we've explored so far. Because now we enter the world of 5 young men who once drank tea under the ancient towers of Cambridge, while secretly preparing to betray the nation that raised them. They weren't trained assassins. They weren't desperate or oppressed. They were brilliant, privileged, admired, the very future of Britain. And yet they turned, not for money, not out of fear, but for something far more complicated, far more human. So as you settle back into your pillow, breathing a little slower, let us drift to Cambridge, 1934, where 5 young men were forming over wine, philosophy, and quiet idealism. They had no idea that the choices they made would unravel alliances, topple careers, and cost more than 50 lives. And this is where Part 2 truly begins. We enter one of the darkest and most quietly determined chapters in the entire history of espionage. A chapter not born from ambition, nor politics, nor ideology, but from grief. From the kind of grief that settles into the bones of a nation and refuses to fade. It began in Munich, in the summer of 1972. What should have been a celebration of unity, of athletes gathering under peaceful skies, became a night soaked in horror. 11 Israeli Olympians were taken hostage, and by morning, all 11 were dead. There was no battlefield, no warning, only the unbearable silence of a massacre carried live on the world's television screens. For Israel, that silence hardened into something else, a vow, a promise whispered not in rage, but in resolve. Those who spill our blood will not sleep easily in this world again. And so began Operation Wrath of God, one of the longest and most relentless covert manhunts in modern history. It did not roar. It moved quietly, like a shadow slipping beneath doorways. Mossad teams stepped into European streets with the calm precision of people who had trained their whole lives to be unnoticed. Their targets were scattered across Rome, Paris, Beirut, Athens. Men connected to the Munich massacre through planning, logistics, or silent approval. There were no grand speeches, no declarations. Only files exchanged in dimly lit rooms, photographs marked with faint pencil strokes, and agents who vanished into crowds as if dissolving into air. But a 20-year hunt cannot remain perfect, not even for Mossad. And in 1973, in a small Norwegian town called Lillehammer, something went terribly wrong. The agents followed a man they believed to be a high-ranking planner of the Munich attack. They watched him, tracked him, studied his movements, and then, one quiet night, they acted. But the man was not a terrorist. He was a Moroccan waiter, ordinary, innocent, a life mistaken for another's, And suddenly Mossad, usually a ghost, a rumor, a whisper, was exposed. Arrests followed. Headlines screamed. The operation went dark for a time, absorbing the weight of its own mistake. But grief does not abandon its purpose. It reshapes it, refines it, learns from it without letting go. And so the hunt continued, more precise, more patient, more silent. Tonight, as we float through this part of the story, we sense something deeper beneath the operations and disguises, a question that has haunted espionage since the beginning of time. Where does justice end and vengeance begin? Mossad never answered that question. Perhaps no one can. But for 2 decades, they carried out a vow made in the shadow of loss. Not loudly, not proudly, just quietly, relentlessly, until nearly every man connected to Munich had been tracked down. A promise, fulfilled not through fury, but through persistence. The kind that whispers instead of shouts. And as this part of the story settles into the stillness of the night, we step away from the chase and breathe with the understanding that even the longest hunt begins not with anger, but with a wound that refuses to close. We drift toward a different kind of operation, one not born from vengeance or grief, but from a kind of courage so quiet, so precise, that it almost feels like a heartbeat held in the dark. Operation Entebbe was not supposed to be possible. Even the people who planned it whispered their doubts into rooms where hope felt too fragile to touch. It began on June 27, 1976, when an Air France plane traveling from Tel Aviv to Paris was hijacked in the sky. The aircraft, heavy with fear and confusion, was diverted thousands of kilometers away to Entebbe Airport in Uganda, ruled at the time by Idi Amin, a man whose smile could turn to cruelty in a single breath. Inside the plane, the passengers waited. Mothers clutching children, elderly travelers trying to steady their hands, young men staring at the floor as if answers might rise from the cracks. The hijackers separated the hostages by nationality. Israelis and Jews were placed on one side of the room. Everyone else was eventually released. It was a moment heavy with the echoes of a darker century, and Israel understood immediately that time was not on their side. The world expected negotiation, diplomacy, slow, careful steps. But Mossad and the Israeli Defense Forces quietly considered something else, something almost unthinkable, a rescue mission across 4,000 kilometers of hostile airspace. A mission that would require stealth, precision, disguise, and a level of coordination so sharp that it would feel like the entire operation was inhaling all at once. And yet, they planned it anyway, because 83 Israeli passengers waited in a foreign airport guarded by terrorists and protected by a dictator whose loyalty shifted like sand in the wind. Mossad gathered intel piece by piece, floor layouts, guard rotations, the exact shape of the old terminal building. Every detail mattered, even the smallest doorway, even the length of a shadow. And then came the strangest part of the plan, a detail that sounds like fiction, except it wasn't. The commandos would drive into the airport in a black Mercedes painted to resemble the one Idi Amin used. The idea was simple. If the guards saw the car, they might hesitate long enough for the operation to begin without a single shot fired. In the darkness of July 3rd, 4 Israeli aircraft lifted off the runway, flying low over the Red Sea to avoid radar detection. In the cockpit, the pilots barely spoke. The night hummed beneath them. Every second felt stretched thin. Every cloud felt like a wall. And then, after hours of silence, the wheels touched the ground in Entebbe. The ramp opened, the first commando jeep rolled forward, carrying the black Mercedes. They moved quickly, almost soundlessly, across the tarmac. The Ugandan guards stared, confused, because Idi Amin used to arrive in that exact kind of car. That brief confusion, just seconds, was all the Israelis needed. What followed was swift, controlled, frighteningly precise. Commandos burst into the old terminal, shouting in Hebrew so the hostages would duck. Gunfire cracked through the night. Within minutes, the terrorists lay still. And the hostages, shaking, crying, unable to comprehend what was happening, were led toward the waiting planes. But no mission, not even one this miraculous, escapes loss. The commander of the raid, Yonatan Yahu, was struck by a bullet and killed outside the terminal. His brother, Benjamin Netanyahu, would one day lead Israel. Tonight, though, he was simply a man grieving in the dim light of Entebbe Airport. The entire operation lasted just 90 minutes. 90 minutes to rewrite what the world believed was possible. 90 minutes to turn despair into deliverance. 90 minutes to show that sometimes courage is not loud, but quiet. An exhale held steady even when the darkness feels absolute. As we settle into this story, we feel not the noise of battle, but the stillness of that moment when the planes finally lifted off the runway, carrying the hostages toward home. A silence filled not with fear, but with the soft, trembling weight of survival. Tonight, as we drift farther from the roaring engines of Entebbe and the dimly lit corridors of Munich's revenge, we enter a different era, one where spies no longer wear disguises or slip across borders in the rain. This time, the operative is invisible, silent, and smaller than the grain of dust. Its battlefield is not a street or an airport, but the quiet, humming interior of a machine. Stuxnet, a word that barely means anything to most people, yet changed the nature of espionage forever. It was a piece of code, beautiful in its precision, terrifying in its purpose, born in secret rooms where keyboards replaced rifles, and where silence was the only language spoken. The story begins around 2005, when Mossad and the United States quietly realized that Iran's nuclear program was accelerating beyond negotiations and speeches. Deep underground, in a heavily guarded facility called Natanz, thousands of centrifuges spun in perfect, tireless motion, thin aluminum tubes rotating at incredible speeds, enriching uranium grain by grain, the way time grinds mountains into sand. Mossad knew one thing: a traditional strike would ignite a regional war. But a digital whisper, a ghost slipping through wires, could slow everything down without a single explosion. And so Stuxnet was born. It took years of quiet collaboration, testing, discarding, rewriting,
redesigning, like sculptors carving a statue from pure silence. Stuxnet was not just malicious software, it was a symphony. A piece of espionage art so delicate that it could hide inside a machine and wait for the perfect moment to inhale. First, it had to get in. That was the impossible part. The Natanz facility wasn't connected to the internet. It was sealed off, isolated, like a monastery built beneath the desert. But human behavior is the one door no security system can lock. A single USB drive, carried unknowingly by a technician, became the bridge, an unremarkable object humming with secret life. When the code touched the centrifuges, it didn't break them all at once. That would have raised alarms. Instead, it played with rhythm. It made the machines spin too fast, then too slow. Tiny fluctuations that looked like mechanical fatigue. To Iranian engineers, the failures seemed random. A worn-out bearing here, a misaligned rotor there. They replaced parts. They checked wiring. They blamed manufacturing defects. And all the while, Stuxnet watched, waited, whispered, until over 1,000 centrifuges, just enough to set the program back years, fell into ruin like a row of quiet dominoes. No fire, no sirens, just silence. A silence filled with confusion, suspicion, and the unsettling sense that something unseen was moving inside the walls. When cybersecurity researchers eventually found the virus in 2010, they were stunned. It was too sophisticated, too controlled, too patient to be the work of any ordinary hacker. It could identify specific industrial equipment. It could stay dormant for months. It could rewrite its own traces like snow covering footsteps in the night. And layered into the code were small, almost poetic fragments, hidden signatures hinting at the hands that built it. Stuxnet didn't just cripple a nuclear program, it opened a new chapter in espionage, one where wars could be fought without uniforms, without borders, without sound, where a piece of code could cause more damage than a battalion, where the battlefield could be a blinking server light in a room no larger than a closet. As we close this part of the story, imagine the Natanz facility on the morning the centrifuges finally failed. Engineers staring at the silent machines, unable to explain why the rhythm had collapsed. Imagine the weight of that moment, the unease, the slow realization that danger no longer needed footsteps. It only needed an idea. And somewhere, in a quiet room, far from the desert, someone clicked a keyboard and let the darkness dissolve into stillness again. As we drift gently into the 7th chapter of this long journey through hidden histories, we step back to a time when espionage was not yet the realm of satellites, quantum codes, or machines that hummed beneath fluorescent lights. Instead, it belonged to ink bottles, handwritten letters, feathers, and soft wings beating against the dusk. The early 1910s were an age of slow messages and wooden desks, yet they were also the birthplace of technologies that would shape an entire century of secret wars. In those days, spies carried no screens, no encrypted phones, only silence, discipline, and tools so simple they felt almost like children's toys. But sometimes simplicity is its own kind of genius. Invisible ink was one of the first miracles of that era. Imagine a small room lit by a lonely candle. A letter sits on the table, blank, harmless, pure. And yet, beneath that emptiness hides a message written in lemon juice or iron salts, waiting patiently for heat to reveal its truth. Many of these letters traveled across borders inside coat pockets or saddlebags, passing quietly through the hands of postmasters who never suspected a thing. And then there were pigeons, the old, loyal companions of human conflict. Not majestic like eagles, not swift like falcons, but stubborn, determined, and endlessly reliable. At night, when the world slept, their wings cut through the cold wind, carrying messages that could change battles, save cities, or alter the fate of a nation. Some flew through storms, others through bullets. Many never returned. Yet they shaped wars just as surely as any diplomat or general. By the time the world tumbled into the 1940s, espionage had grown darker, sharper, more mathematical. The quiet tools of the previous decades evolved into something colder, machines that did not tire, did not doubt, and did not forget. And perhaps no machine symbolized this more than the German Enigma. Picture a small box made of metal and wood, keys arranged like a typewriter but humming with a strange electric pulse. To an untrained eye, it looked ordinary, but inside, rotors spun like the gears of a clock crafted by a perfectionist god. Each tap of a key reshuffled the universe of letters, turning simple sentences into a labyrinth only one path could unlock. Every day, the code changed. Every day, thousands of operators believed their messages were unbreakable. But in the quiet rooms of Bletchley Park, men and women huddled around machines of their own, strange devices humming beneath lamps, minds sharpening into blades as they tried to decode a war. Their goal was not glory, not fame, but simply to understand, to read what was hidden, to save lives quietly. Alongside Enigma came something even smaller, almost poetic in its delicacy: microdots. A full page of intelligence shrunk to the size of a grain of sand, pressed under a postage stamp or tucked into the period at the end of a sentence. A spy could walk past a dozen soldiers carrying an entire operation in the corner of a letter, and no one would know. It was the art of making the enormous disappear into the invisible. This era, stretching from the soft wings of pigeons to the electric heartbeat of code-breaking machines, taught the world one lesson. Espionage is not defined by violence, but by attention. The smallest detail, the faintest hesitation, the quietest tool. As you breathe slowly now, imagine those early spies at their desks, dipping pens into clear ink that no one would see. Imagine a pigeon taking flight into the dawn, carrying a message smaller than a prayer. Imagine the soft clicking of Enigma's keys as the night wrapped itself around Europe. Tonight, as you rest, we honor the shadows that built the foundation for every modern operation to come. Shadows made of silence, patience, and the delicate belief that even the smallest tool can change the course of history. Tonight, as we drift gently from the era of pigeons and ink that hid beneath candlelight, we enter a colder age. An age when the shadows grew sharper and every alleyway, every hotel hallway, every quiet park bench felt like a stage where nations whispered through their agents. The Cold War was not fought with great armies colliding on fields. It was fought in silence, in glances, in coded phrases, in briefcases that clicked shut, in footsteps that pretended not to follow anyone. And to survive in that silence, spies carried tools designed not to impress, but to disappear. One of the most haunting inventions of this era was small enough to fit inside a handbag and elegant enough to pass for makeup: a lipstick pistol. Imagine a woman in a quiet street in East Berlin, the lamps above her flickering like nervous thoughts. She reaches into her purse not for beauty, but for survival. A tiny device disguised as something so ordinary that no passerby would give it a second glance. With a single press, it could fire a small but deadly round. No noise, no flash, just the faint mechanical heartbeat of a secret world trying to stay alive. But the Cold War was not merely about hidden weapons. It was about escape, about the human instinct to carry hope even through the darkest routes. And for that, spies needed tools that could vanish completely, tools that could endure searches, interrogations, and the watchful eyes of border guards. The rectal toolkit, as unsettling as its name may sound, was exactly that: a tiny capsule holding lockpicks, saws, and wires, created not for violence, but for liberation. It was a last resort, a silent promise carried deep within the body, saying, if they cage you, you can still find a way out. These tools were not glamorous. They were born from desperation, crafted for moments when every second mattered and every noise could be the last. Later, as rival agencies grew more paranoid, spies turned to tools that blended into the world even when dropped in plain sight. Dead drop spikes were among the simplest yet most poetic of them. Picture a hollow metal spike driven quietly into the soil beneath a park bench, its cap sealed tight over the secrets inside. A courier could pass by hours later, retrieve or deposit a message without ever stopping. Two strangers walking the same route on different days, connected by a silent metal heartbeat underground. Spy dust, on the other hand, felt like something from folklore, a powder sprinkled secretly onto a target's clothing, glowing faintly under ultraviolet light. It left no trail for the human eye, yet revealed every step the target took. In a world where trust had eroded, where even smiles carried suspicion, this silent powder turned footsteps into confessions. As the decades rolled toward the 1980s, espionage began to shed its romantic sheen. The tools, once clever and whimsical, became colder, more exact, reflecting a world where mistakes were no longer forgiven, and every agent understood that a single slip could mean the end. But even in this immense tension, there was a strange, quiet beauty to the craft. Not beauty in violence, but in precision, in the idea that a tool could fit in a pocket, look like nothing, and yet protect someone walking alone through the fog of divided cities, in the idea that silence itself could be engineered. And as we settle deeper into tonight's story, imagine those spies moving through the dim streets of Moscow, Berlin, Budapest, hands in pockets, eyes forward, hearts steady. Imagine the tools hidden beneath their clothes, inside their shoes, beneath the earth, or glowing silently on a stranger's coat. These were not weapons meant to scream. They were instruments meant to keep the world from collapsing into noise. And in their quiet way, they shaped decades of history without ever demanding to be seen.
As we drift beyond the Cold War's fog and step quietly into the modern age, the world of espionage becomes less about objects you can hold and more about forces that move like breath, light, quick, invisible. The 21st century reshaped the spy's toolkit the way wind reshapes sand dunes. Subtly, endlessly, almost imperceptibly, until you realize the landscape has changed forever. In the early 2000s, drones evolved from distant military silhouettes into objects so small they could land on a fingertip. Imagine a machine no larger than a dragonfly hovering outside a window, its microscopic wings humming softly, carrying a camera that weighs less than a raindrop. No cloak, no trench coat, no silent footfalls, just a tiny whisper of movement in the night air. For the first time, a spy didn't need to risk stepping into danger. They could watch from the other side of a wall or from a pocket of wind drifting between city buildings. And beneath this new sky of silent machines, another tool was growing, one that didn't rely on lenses or wings, but on the unique map of a human face. Facial recognition became the new border, the new lock, the new barrier between secrets and safety. A single photograph could trigger an alarm across continents. Meanwhile, deep beneath the surface, a new shadow was forming, one made not of chemicals or bullets, but of algorithms. AI deepfakes, digital illusions sculpted from millions of pixels, became the modern spy's mask. A face could speak words it never said. A diplomat could appear to declare war. A leader could confess to crimes they never committed. It was deception in its purest form, an illusion so smooth it felt like silk against the mind. And then came quantum encryption, a technology that sounded like a spell whispered by scientists, codes that could not be copied, messages that collapsed into nothing if intercepted. For centuries, spies hid their secrets behind locks, ciphers, invisible inks. But in this new era, the secret itself became alive, fragile, aware, an idea that vanished the moment someone tried to touch it. Yet even as technology soared into the intangible, the world of espionage never forgot the tools of earlier, stranger decades. And perhaps the most haunting of them, the one that echoes across the years like a quiet warning, was an umbrella carried on a rainy day in London in 1978. Picture a gray sidewalk shimmering with raindrops. Pedestrians walk quickly, collars up, umbrellas open, the city breathing in its usual hurried rhythm. Among them is a man named Georgy Markov, a writer who had fled his homeland. As he waits for a bus on Waterloo Bridge, he feels a sudden sting on his thigh. Small, insignificant, like the prick of a bee. A man nearby murmurs an apology, holding an umbrella tipped with a metal point. The moment passes, the stranger walks away. The city swallows him. But inside that umbrella was a tiny mechanism that released a microscopic pellet filled with ricin, a poison almost impossible to detect. No gunshot, no chase,
no sound louder than a whispered sorry, and yet the poison worked silently, patiently, like a ghost curling through Markov's veins. In many ways, that umbrella was the bridge between old espionage and the future. A reminder that tools don't need to be loud to be devastating, and the danger often arrives in its softest form. Tonight, as we rest within these stories, we see how espionage has always moved in one direction, towards silence. From nanodrones dancing like insects in the air, to AI illusions drifting across screens, to codes that vanish when touched, the future of spying is not about force. It is about subtlety, stillness, precision, and sometimes a single moment. A sting on a rainy day in London in 1978 can shift the entire balance of the world. The story of modern espionage doesn't begin with a gadget, a drone, or a secret algorithm. It begins with a single man sitting alone in a small room in Hong Kong, staring at a laptop screen that held more power than any weapon he had ever touched. Edward Snowden was not a spy in the traditional sense. No disguises, no code names whispered in alleys, no briefcases switching hands. He was something far more unsettling, a person who understood the machine from the inside. Before he left the United States, intelligence agencies saw him as a gifted analyst, a man who could read patterns inside oceans of data the way others read weather or music. But as he dug deeper into the quiet tunnels of digital surveillance, he began to see something he could no longer ignore. Not a plot, not a conspiracy, but a structure, vast, expanding, silent. A system that collected almost everything. The calls people made, the sites they visited, the voices they thought were private, the messages meant only for one pair of eyes. To Snowden, it felt like standing in a dark room and realizing the walls were made of mirrors, and those mirrors were watching. When he gathered the files and left the country, he wasn't running away. He was crossing a threshold that almost no intelligence officer ever crosses, choosing the unknown over loyalty. It wasn't courage, it wasn't betrayal, it was something quieter, heavier. The decision to let the world see the machinery humming beneath everyday life. When the documents surfaced, the world shifted. People looked at their phones differently, as if the glow of the screen now carried a second layer of meaning. Nations confronted each other with uncomfortable truths. The digital age suddenly felt less like a convenience and more like a cathedral with no doors, where everyone's footsteps echoed louder than they realized. Snowden didn't topple a government. He didn't expose a mole. What he revealed was far stranger. The realization that modern espionage no longer hides in shadows. It hides in routine. It thrives in habit. It grows in the spaces where people forget they are being watched because the watching feels so ordinary. And through his leak, a new kind of spy was born. Not an individual, but the very systems we built. A network that knows when you wake up, how long you stay awake, what comforts you, what unsettles you, without ever speaking a word. As Snowden sat in that Hong Kong hotel room giving his final interview, he looked surprisingly calm. Not triumphant, not broken, simply aware that his life had divided into a before and an after. The digital world had crossed a line, and he had chosen to acknowledge it. Whether he became a traitor or a guardian is a question history will decide slowly, like sediments settling at the bottom of a river. But one thing became unmistakably clear. The era of espionage had changed forever. It no longer needed disguises or secret meetings. The new battlefield was made of data, silent, patient, loyal to no one. And Snowden, willingly or not, became its first great defector.
Long before governments understood the danger of the digital world, someone else was already learning how to move through it like a shadow. Not soldiers, not diplomats, but groups hidden behind glowing screens. Teams of quiet minds who didn't need borders, passports, or safe houses. They only needed a connection. These groups would later be labeled with cold technical names. APT this, APT that. But behind the acronyms were people who understood something fundamental. If the 20th century belonged to spies in trench coats, the 21st would belong to those who could slip through firewalls without leaving a footprint. Imagine a door that doesn't exist in the real world, a door made of code and silence. Someone touches it gently from thousands of miles away, and suddenly an entire network, military, corporate, political, breathes differently. Files shift, systems pause, the digital world listens. Cyber espionage didn't erupt like a new weapon. It seeped in slowly, the way ink spreads across paper. Small breaches at first, test signals, harmless probes. Then, as governments realized what could be done with just a few lines of code, the game changed forever. Power was no longer measured in armies or fleets, but in who understood the quiet architecture beneath the internet's surface. But the most unsettling evolution wasn't the hacking itself. It was the art of manipulating people without ever touching them. A well-crafted message, a fake profile that listens better than any friend, a gentle nudge that guides someone toward a decision they think they made themselves. Social engineering didn't need coercion. It needed patience. It needed empathy, even. The spy of the past had to pick a lock. The spy of the present only had to understand what someone feared, desired, or hoped for. And people revealed more than they thought. They always did. A photograph on a birthday, a complaint whispered into a message, a habit checking a phone at 2 a.m. every night. In a world where oversharing became normal, the line between truth and vulnerability blurred. Yet something stranger began happening at the edges of this digital evolution. People stopped trusting their own eyes. A video could be manipulated. A voice could be forged. A face could confess to a crime it never committed. With deepfake technology, reality no longer had to be witnessed. It could be manufactured. There was a quiet moment sometime in the last decade when humanity collectively realized that certainty had become fragile. If your eyes could be fooled and your ears could be deceived, what remained? And still, beneath all the fear and fascination, the digital world hummed on. People woke up, checked their phones, searched for comfort in glowing screens,
unaware that every gesture, every scroll, every pause became part of an invisible archive. Cyber spies didn't need to chase their targets. Their targets left breadcrumbs willingly, a pattern of behavior, a rhythm, a heartbeat rendered in notifications. The future of espionage wasn't shaped by weapons, but by attention, where it flowed, how it faltered, what it revealed. Some say that in the digital age, the greatest vulnerability isn't a weak password or an outdated firewall. It is the human need to be seen, to be heard, to belong. And in that need, the quiet architects of the digital world found an entire universe of entry points. Cyber espionage didn't make the world darker. It made it transparent. So transparent that you could see yourself reflected in the glass, though the reflection, increasingly, was no longer something you could trust.
There is a moment in every age when people realize that the tools they created have begun to shape them in return. For espionage, that moment arrived quietly, without alarms, without smoke, without any dramatic scene one might expect from a spy novel. It happened the day humans discovered that identity itself could be forged with the gentlest ripple of code. Deepfakes were not born out of malice. They began as experiments, curiosities, a blend of math and imagination. But as they grew more precise, a strange discomfort settled in. If a face could be duplicated perfectly, then the boundary between truth and illusion became little more than a suggestion. A world built on sight, on trust in the eye, suddenly found its foundation trembling. And yet the real transformation wasn't in the videos or the altered voices. It was in what came after. People began to doubt everything. A confession could be dismissed as fake. A threat could be mistaken for fiction. A lie could masquerade as fact with ease. The digital fog thickened around humanity's sense of certainty until even the simple act of believing became exhausting. But as deepfakes blurred what is real, another force rose quietly: quantum computing. Unlike the sharp intrusions of hackers, quantum power felt cold, elegant, inevitable. It didn't break into systems. It slipped through them the way water seeps into stone. Codes that once protected nations could crumble effortlessly. Secrets long buried could bloom again in unwelcome light. Espionage, once defined by patience and caution, now existed in a landscape where nothing stayed hidden long enough to matter. And still the world continued to record itself. Every heartbeat, every location, every forgotten message. People documented their lives not out of vanity, but out of habit, leaving trails they no longer noticed. In this constant unraveling of privacy, a quiet paradox emerged. The more visible we all became, the easier it was to shape us, not through force, but through suggestion, nudges, recommendations, reminders, each tailored to the rhythms of our minds.
And so espionage entered a new realm where battles were fought not for information, but for attention. The one thing every person gives away without meaning to. Somewhere in this vast digital tapestry, the old idea of a spy, the lone figure slipping through alleys, faded into myth. In its place stood systems, algorithms, patterns that watched the world softly, relentlessly, learning more with each passing night. But even in this strange future, one truth refuses to disappear. Humans still choose. Behind every line of code, behind every digital shadow, there remains a mind deciding whether to hide, reveal, protect, or expose. As this story reaches its final breath, imagine the digital world dimming its glow, the notifications quiet, the screens grow still, the frantic pulse of information softens into something warm and far away. And there you are, untouched for a moment by the noise of the age. In this pocket of silence, a final question floats gently toward you, not to disturb your rest, but to rest beside you like a companion. In a world where every footprint becomes a data point, can anyone truly disappear? Or have we all become quiet observers of our own lives, leaving traces, following them, and drifting between the things we reveal and the things we never meant to share? Whatever the answer is, let it fade now. Let the digital shadows dissolve at the edge of your breath. The story has carried you far enough for tonight. You have wandered through secrets and echoes, and the fragile boundary between truth and illusion. Now the world can fall away, and you can sleep.
Bonn, West Germany, 1968. A soft rain was falling outside the interrogation building, tapping slowly against the windows like a tired metronome. Inside, a 35-year-old secretary named Leonore Hines sat quietly, hands folded, eyes half closed. Not in fear, but in something closer to heartbreak. She had just been arrested for treason. But what truly unsettled the investigators wasn't the classified NATO defense plans she had smuggled out, or the coded notes hidden inside her purse. It was her answer when they asked her why she did it. "I loved him," she whispered. "I would have done anything for him." The man she loved did not exist. Not in the way she believed. He was a Romeo agent of the East German Stasi, trained to create a love so powerful that loyalty, logic, even national identity dissolved into a kind of emotional fog. And tonight, as we drift softly into this chapter, we explore how such men were forged, not from cruelty, but from loneliness, desire, and the delicate machinery of human need. The story of the Romeo program did not begin with seduction.
It began with strategy. In the late 1950s, senior Stasi officers realized something that Western intelligence agencies had overlooked. The strongest vaults were not made of steel, but of the human heart. So they founded a school. Not a military academy, not a spy camp, but something closer to a theater conservatory twisted into a psychological laboratory. Here, young men were chosen with impossible precision. Handsome, but not intimidating. Confident, but not arrogant. Intelligent, but gentle. They were taught to move with grace, to speak with sincerity, to look into a woman's eyes and make her feel seen for the first time in years. They studied psychology like surgeons. They practiced vulnerability like actors. They learned the silences between words, the pauses that create intimacy, the careful choreography of listening, comforting, and slowly becoming indispensable. Their mission was not to steal documents. Their mission was to fill a void. And West Germany in the 1960s had many voids. Women in their 30s and 40s, lonely after divorce, overlooked in their offices, burdened with responsibilities, but starved of affection. These women didn't need diamonds. They needed someone who remembered how they liked their coffee, someone who called them beautiful without irony, someone who made them feel chosen. It is easy to judge them from a distance, but imagine working long hours in a gray office, day after day, unnoticed. Imagine going home to an apartment where the silence feels heavier than furniture. Now imagine that one evening, at a conference, or a train station, or a quiet hotel bar, a man appears. He listens. He remembers your birthday. He reads the books you recommend. He kisses you gently, not with hunger, but with devotion. And somewhere in that blooming warmth, the idea of saying yes to a small request feels harmless. Perhaps it is only a directory. Perhaps it is only a routine schedule. Perhaps it is nothing serious, until it is everything. For the Stasi, this was not seduction. It was engineering. A 2-year training program shaped by psychologists, sociologists, sexual behavior experts, and propaganda officers, all converging on one goal: to create a man who could slip through a woman's emotional defenses with the elegance of a whispered secret. By the mid-1960s, there were 25 to 30 Romeo agents operating simultaneously across West Germany. Their reports were so reliable that Stasi officers often trusted them more than their own analysts. But behind each successful mission was a woman who thought she had finally found love, only to realize years later that she had been loving a ghost crafted in a laboratory of manipulation. Tonight, as we follow the soft trail of their stories, remember this: the greatest intelligence operations are not built on codes or machines. They are built on longing, the quiet ache inside every human soul, the part that wants to be seen, chosen, and kept. And the Stasi understood that ache better than anyone. There are stories that slip so gently between the cracks of history that even those who lived inside them struggle to understand how everything spiraled into betrayal, devotion, and a love that was never real. And yet, for the women targeted by the Romeo program, the truth is always the same. It didn't begin with espionage. It began with warmth, soft, slow, comforting warmth after years of emotional winter. Our first story belongs to Gabriele Gast, a young intelligence analyst working for the BND, West Germany's version of the CIA. On paper, she was brilliant, fluent in Russian, gifted in political analysis, trusted by superiors. But brilliance does not protect the heart. At a conference in 1968, she met a man named Karl-Heinz Schmidt. He was charming in a quiet way, the kind of man who didn't ask for attention because attention moved toward him naturally. He laughed easily, listened deeply, and seemed genuinely fascinated by her mind. No one had ever made her feel that way. Over the years, the love affair stretched into a 22-year relationship. Coffee shared at small cafe tables, letters written with tenderness, weekends that felt like tiny pockets of escape from the pressure of her work. She believed she had found her life partner. She had no idea she was slowly handing him the keys to her country's most sensitive secrets. More than 2,000 classified documents passed through her hands and into his. Reports about Soviet operations, NATO risk assessments, files that shaped the political stability of Europe. And yet, when she was finally arrested in 1990, the year the Berlin Wall fell, she didn't cry for the prison bars closing around her. She cried because the man she loved was a fiction scripted by the Stasi. "I loved someone," she said later, "but he never existed." The second story belongs to Leonore Heinz, the woman from our opening scene. She wasn't an intelligence analyst, but her position as a secretary inside NATO headquarters made her a high-value target. Her Romeo was named Hans-Joachim Teitke, or at least that was the identity he wore like a second skin. He made her laugh during lunch breaks. He brought her tulips on rainy days. He held her hand as if she were the only person inside the noise of the world. When he asked her for help, she said yes, not because she hated her country, but because love makes the impossible feel harmless. But everything collapsed in 1985 when he defected to East Germany and appeared on television beside Stasi officers. Leonore watched the broadcast in disbelief, whispering to herself, "It can't be him! It can't!" Yet, it was. The third story is the most fragile of all. Ursula Richter worked in the West German Foreign Ministry. She was thoughtful, shy, and too gentle to recognize danger hiding behind a handsome smile. She fell in love with a Romeo agent who called himself Jürgen, a man who memorized her favorite poems and kissed her forehead as if promising a future he never planned to give. When she became pregnant, the Stasi saw not a child, but leverage. They pressured her to continue stealing information, insisting that she was protecting the man she loved, the father of her baby. The emotional weight grew unbearable. In 1979, trapped between fear and despair, she ended her life. A Romeo agent attended her funeral from a distance. He left no flowers, no words, only a shadow that drifted away before anyone noticed. These stories, when placed side by side, form a quiet pattern, not of weakness, but of longing. These women were not naive. They were not foolish. They were simply human. They wanted connection. They wanted tenderness. They wanted to feel chosen. And the Stasi exploited that desire with surgical precision, designing each Romeo to be exactly what a lonely soul needed most. Tonight, as we drift deeper, remember, the wounds left by betrayal do not bleed on the surface. They bleed in silence, where no one can see and where healing takes the longest.
Love has always been the most unpredictable element in espionage. Soft enough to soothe, sharp enough to wound, and powerful enough to make even the most guarded soul open its doors. And in the shadowed world of the Romeo program, love was both the key and the lock, the question and the answer, the beginning and the ruin. But to understand why it worked so devastatingly well, we have to look not at the agents, but at the women themselves. The Stasi didn't target government workers because of access. They targeted them because of loneliness. Psychological profiles from the 1960s described a very specific pattern. Women between 30 and 45, often single or divorced, carrying the weight of professional responsibility without the presence of emotional support. Their isolation made them invisible, a silence easy to overlook in the noise of modern life. And so the Romeo agents stepped into that silence. Their training was not a list of tricks, but a philosophy. Make her feel safe. Make her feel chosen. Make her feel seen. They practiced eye contact that lingered just long enough to feel intimate, but never invasive. They practiced listening without interruption, creating the illusion of perfect understanding. They practiced affection in small, almost forgettable gestures, the brushing of a hand, the softness in a greeting, the way they leaned in when she spoke. They practiced the art of desire without haste, because haste breaks illusions, and their illusions needed to last for years. Each relationship followed a path that seemed organic, but was meticulously designed. First, the accidental meeting, arranged but appearing spontaneous. Then, the slow build of deep emotional intimacy. After that came the offering of devotion, the merging of routines, the steady stitching together of two lives that were never meant to truly merge. And when the bond was strong enough, when the woman's world quietly revolved around the Romeo's affection, the first request came. Gentle, framed as a favor, wrapped in tenderness. A work schedule, a harmless memo, a non-classified directory. Just something to help him with a situation he couldn't explain fully. After that, he would apologize. He would say he felt ashamed for asking. He would promise never to do it again. And she, wanting to prove her loyalty, her love, her belief in him, would reassure him. And the cycle continued, gently, invisibly, until the line between devotion and treason blurred into something she could no longer distinguish. The tragedy was not that these women gave away secrets. It was that they gave away themselves. When the truth came, through arrests, through defectors, through newspapers, they weren't angry at the documents they had leaked. They were shattered because the man they loved had been a performance, a mask, a calculated psychological construct. Some refused to believe it. Some defended their Romeos even in court. Some, like Ursula, could not endure the weight of the deception. And yet, for the Stasi, love was simply another weapon. Efficient, quiet, invisible. No gadgets, no codes, no risk of being caught hiding a transmitter. Just the human heart, open and unguarded. But as the Cold War deepened, and as the world turned ever more suspicious and interconnected, intelligence agencies began to realize that seduction was only one piece of the puzzle. Across the ocean, the CIA was experimenting with something different, something less emotional, but just as powerful. They discovered that stories could shape minds. Books could open borders. Literature could slip through walls that even romance could not breach. And so, while East Germany weaponized love, the United States turned to another form of persuasion, subtle, intellectual, almost invisible. But that is a story that waits patiently in the quiet of the next chapter. For now, as we exhale softly, let us linger a moment longer in the truth the Romeo operations revealed. Spies may be trained in secrets, disguise, deception, but the most dangerous battlefield is always the human heart.
Brussels, September 1958. The International Book Fair was a maze of bright banners, polished floors, and the soft murmur of thousands of readers drifting past rows of novels from every corner of the world. But among the crowds, one man stood out, not because he was special, but because he was trembling. His name has been lost to history, but his moment has not. He was a young Soviet visitor, invited to represent a cultural delegation, and in his hands, held tightly against his chest as if it might vanish, was a book with a simple blue cover, Dr. Zhivago, a book he had been told never to touch, a book that did not officially exist in his homeland. He had no idea that the copy he held was printed not in Italy, as the cover suggested, but by the CIA, in a secret operation with a strange code name, A.E. Dinosaur. At that moment, he did not know he was holding a weapon. Not a gun, not a bomb, but something far more dangerous for a regime built on fear, a story. To understand why this book mattered, we must return to 1955, when a poet named Boris Pasternak sat alone in a quiet dacha outside Moscow. He was already one of Russia's greatest literary voices, but what he was writing now would change not only his life, but the psychological fabric of the Soviet Union. Dr. Zhivago was the kind of story the government feared most, a narrative where love was more important than ideology, where individuals mattered more than the collective, where the brutality of revolution was not justified by utopian dreams. Pasternak did not attack the Soviet state directly. He simply portrayed human beings as complicated souls with desires, doubts, and contradictions. And in a society where art existed only to glorify the party, this alone was treason. When he submitted the manuscript to the official Soviet Publishing Committee in 1956, they rejected it with a sentence that could freeze the blood of any writer. This work expresses ideas that are incompatible with socialist values. It must not be published. But Pasternak, with quiet courage, made a choice that would define his legacy. He trusted the power of literature more than the threats of the state. So he passed the manuscript secretly to an Italian publisher, Feltrinelli, who released the novel in 1957. The world exploded with praise. A year later, in 1958, Pasternak was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. To Western readers, it was a literary triumph. To Moscow, it was a political humiliation. The Kremlin demanded he refuse the prize. Newspapers called him a traitor. His neighbors whispered that he had disgraced the motherland. KGB agents followed him on forest walks, interrogated him, and warned him that accepting the prize could result in exile. Pasternak, exhausted and frightened, wrote a short telegram to Sweden. "I refuse the prize. Please forgive me." His heart broke with those words. But the CIA saw an opportunity. They understood that a banned book carries a different kind of magic. The more forbidden it is, the more powerful it becomes. And so Operation AE Dinosaur was born. The plan was simple in theory, but bold in execution. Thousands of copies of Dr. Zhivago printed in small, pocket-sized editions with no CIA branding, quietly smuggled into the hands of Soviet citizens traveling abroad. The agency believed that once the story entered the Soviet bloodstream, it would move silently from reader to reader, opening cracks inside the walls of certainty that the regime tried so hard to maintain. And they were right. That young man in Brussels, holding the blue book with trembling fingers, was not just a reader. He was the first link in a chain that would eventually reach millions. Tonight, as we begin this final chapter, we follow that chain. Not through bullets or codes, but through pages, ink, and the quiet revolution of the human mind. The CIA's move into literature might sound unusual in a world of hidden cameras, code names, and silent assassins. But by 1958, American analysts understood something profound. Ideas could cross borders that spies could not. A single story, whispered from one reader to another, could travel farther than any covert operative. And Dr. Zhivago, with its quiet defiance and deeply human longing, was the perfect spark. Once the novel exploded in Italy and Pasternak's Nobel Prize shook the world, CIA officers stationed in Western Europe began carefully crafting a plan. They located a sympathetic Dutch printing company, far from the political spotlight, and produced 1,000 pocket-sized copies of Dr. Zhivago. Their covers looked modest and harmless, with no mention of the CIA. They were designed to fit inside a coat pocket, a purse, a briefcase, or between the pages of another book. The goal was simple: get these copies into Soviet hands without attracting attention. And the best place to do that was Brussels. The city was hosting the World's Fair, a massive event where citizens of the Soviet Union could travel abroad more freely than usual. The CIA filled diplomatic pouches with the small blue books and delivered them discreetly to their station in Belgium. Then the quiet theater of espionage began. Agents left copies on cafe tables, tucked them onto library shelves, slid them between newspapers in hotel lobbies, and placed them inside restroom stalls at venues where Soviet tour groups gathered. Some books were accidentally dropped on park benches where KGB surveillance would not take notice. Others were handed to priests, students, or sympathetic translators who might pass them along to Soviet visitors. And the response was immediate. Soviet citizens spotted the books like thirsty travelers finding hidden wells. They recognized the title the moment they saw it. They trembled as they picked it up. They stared at the cover as if holding something sacred and forbidden. Then they slipped it quietly into their coats. Some read the book on overnight trains. Some read in bathrooms with the door locked. Some brought it back to Moscow or Leningrad and hid it under mattresses. They copied long passages by hand. They read it aloud in whispers. They passed it to friends with trembling fingers. Within 6 months, hundreds of unofficial copies spread across the Soviet Union like a soft underground fire, one reader igniting the next. Dr. Zhivago taught its readers something dangerous: that private emotion mattered, that personal freedom was not a crime, that love, grief, doubt, and longing were not weaknesses to be eliminated, but truths to be lived. In a world built on collective obedience, such thoughts were subversive, and the KGB knew it. Their reaction was swift and severe. Possessing the novel became grounds for arrest. Agents raided apartments suspected of harboring forbidden books. Students were interrogated. Professors were warned. Anyone caught with Dr. Zhivago risked losing their job or being sent to remote regions for re-education. But repression only deepened the hunger. The more the state tried to destroy the book, the more insistently readers sought it out. By 1959, Dr. Zhivago had become a symbol, not of rebellion, but of possibility. A quiet declaration that individuals had the right to feel, to think, to doubt, to love. And the Soviet people, starved for genuine stories, turned each secret reading into an act of private liberation. Tonight, as we drift deeper into this tale, remember, the CIA didn't try to overthrow a government with bullets or bombs. They simply handed people a mirror, a story that reflected the truth they had always felt, but were never allowed to say aloud. And in that reflection, something inside the Soviet Union began to crack.
As the months passed, Dr. Zhivago spread through the Soviet Union in ways the CIA could never have predicted, moving not through agents or informants, but through whispers, through trembling hands offering a book to a trusted friend, through pages copied by candlelight long after children were asleep. And within those worn pages, something quietly revolutionary was happening. The people who read Zhivago were not rebels. They were teachers, nurses, factory workers, engineers, ordinary citizens who had grown accustomed to living behind walls of slogans, state-approved history, and tales crafted to glorify a system that demanded obedience over humanity. But Zhivago did not lecture them. It simply reminded them what it meant to be human. The love between Yuri Zhivago and Lara was not political. It was tender, flawed, painful, and real. Their longing, their doubts, their grief, all of it contradicted the idea that the state could dictate the shape of a person's soul. And readers felt an ache inside themselves, a recognition that they too had inner worlds that were not owned by the party. Within 6 months, thousands of unofficial copies were circulating, many copied by hand or typed on onion-thin paper to pass among friends. Soviet citizens gathered in kitchens or storage rooms to read aloud a few pages at a time, their voices barely above a whisper, as if afraid the words themselves might betray them. Each reading was an act of private defiance. Each whispered sentence opened tiny fractures in the ideology that had shaped their lives since childhood. And the KGB felt those fractures. They launched raids on apartments suspected of housing banned literature. Students were expelled for possessing even a few pages. Professors disappeared for circulating copies among colleagues. Families burned manuscripts in kitchen sinks when informants were rumored to be nearby. But even as the state tried to crush the book grew stronger. Because Zhivago did not tell people what to think, it allowed them to discover their own thoughts. This was psychological warfare in its gentlest form. Not propaganda, not coercion, just a story. One that encouraged the reader to reflect, to question, to remember that beyond the machinery of the state, the human heart still pulsed with dreams. What made Zhivago so dangerous was not that it criticized Stalin or the revolution. It was that it treated individuals as sacred. In a world where everything belonged to the collective, the book whispered that a single life had meaning. And so each reader who opened the novel became, in a sense, a spy, not for another government, but for themselves. They hid the book under floorboards. They typed fragments on onion-thin paper to pass among friends. They memorized entire passages in case their only copy was confiscated. And as they carried these words through streets, factories, universities, and farming collectives, the ideas inside the book traveled with them, quiet, patient, unstoppable. Meanwhile, the CIA monitored Soviet reactions with increasing fascination. Operation Dinosaur had been launched as a test, but what they witnessed was more powerful than they expected. A novel had become a symbol of resistance, a soft counterforce to authoritarian control. Not a revolt, not an uprising, just a steady erosion of certainty, a slow awakening. The Soviets tried rewriting history textbooks to counter the Zhivago effect, but the attempts felt dry and artificial. You cannot smother a story with slogans. You can only fuel curiosity. And so Zhivago continued to circulate, surviving every attempt to silence it. Tonight, as we follow its quiet journey, we see how a single book, read in secret, shared in fear, cherished in silence, became the spark of a cultural shift that would reach far beyond the dreams of the man who wrote it.
In the years that followed, the quiet spread of Dr. Zhivago became more than a cultural curiosity. It became a slow-moving force, a subtle tremor under the vast concrete foundation of Soviet authority. The people who read it did not march in protest or raise banners. Instead, They carried the book inside them like a hidden ember, a small and persistent glow that warmed their sense of self. And like all embers, it spread warmth before anyone noticed the fire. But while the novel reached millions, Boris Pasternak lived out the final years of his life in the shadow of punishment. After being forced to reject the Nobel Prize, he was barred from the Writers' Union, isolated from colleagues, and hounded by the KGB. He spent his last days surrounded not by literary celebration, but by fear, exhaustion, and the painful awareness that his masterpiece had become a political weapon he never intended. He died in 1960 at the age of 70, his heart worn down long before the Soviet regime that persecuted him would finally collapse. And he never knew the truth, that the CIA had used his book as a tool of psychological resistance, transforming his story of love and human frailty into an instrument of quiet defiance. If he had known, would he have approved? No one can say. His son believed he would have been furious. Others believed he would have been proud. But perhaps the truth lies somewhere between. Zhivago was never meant to serve politics, but it became a refuge for human dignity in a place where dignity had been systematically erased. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union faced consequences far beyond what intelligence officers anticipated. Zhivago planted seeds, and seeds, once rooted, are difficult to remove. In the 1960s and 70s, a new wave of dissident voices emerged. Writers like Solzhenitsyn, thinkers like Sakharov, ordinary citizens who refused to surrender their inner lives to the machinery of the state. Underground publishing networks, known as samizdat, blossomed. People typed forbidden texts on carbon paper, passing them hand to hand across households, universities, and factories. A culture of quiet resistance took shape, not built on violence, but on thought, reflection, and the stubborn belief that individuals mattered. By the time the Soviet Union began to crumble in the late 1980s, Zhivago had become something far larger than a novel. It was a symbol of the right to feel, to choose, to doubt, to love without permission. And in 2014, when the CIA finally declassified the documents of Operation Aidi Nosor, the world learned what had happened behind the curtains. The plan was bold, brilliant, and deeply ironic. In a century defined by nuclear standoffs, proxy wars, and covert assassinations, one of the most effective blows against the Soviet regime came from a book, a story that simply reminded people that their inner lives belonged to them, not to the state. When Pasternak's son read the declassified files, he said something striking. "My father would have been angry," he admitted, "but he also would have been proud that his book opened people's eyes." And perhaps that is the essence of this final chapter. Spycraft is not always about poison umbrellas, encrypted messages, or midnight escapes. Sometimes it is about planting an idea, quietly, gently, with no promise of success, and trusting that it will one day bloom. When the Soviet Union finally dissolved in 1991, many people carried with them battered, yellowed copies of Dr. Zhivago, read dozens of times, their margins scribbled with notes, their pages soft from the touch of countless hands. Some said the book gave them courage. Others said it gave them clarity. But most said it gave them something far more precious, a sense that another life was possible. Tonight, as we close this chapter and drift toward sleep, remember this: a single story, placed in the right hands at the right moment, can do what armies cannot. It can whisper, it can awaken, it can free. And that is the greatest victory any spy could ever hope to achieve, changing history not by force, but by reminding people of their own humanity. 10 stories, 10 lives, 10 quiet ripples that reshaped the world in ways most of us will never fully understand. From Mata Hari dancing under dim Paris lights, to the Cambridge Five walking past the gates of Cambridge with secrets in their coat pockets. From the lonely women deceived by the Romeo agents, to a single forbidden book that cracked open the walls of an empire. They remind us that espionage is never just the realm of heroes or villains. It is the art of survival, the pursuit of belief, the hunger for meaning, and sometimes the quiet longing to be seen. Some of these spies died with honor, their last breath wrapped in duty. Some lived long enough to taste regret. Some vanished into new identities, their real names dissolving into whispers. But all of them, every single one, left fingerprints on the world we inherit today. If you are somehow still awake, thank you for traveling with me through these shadows and stories. And if you've already drifted into sleep, then that is exactly what these nighttime journeys are meant for. As you settle deeper into rest, may your dreams be gentle, peaceful, untouched by codes or betrayals. Only soft silence, warm light, and the comfort of knowing you are safe. Good night, my friend. Sleep well, and may tomorrow meet you with clarity, calm, and a heart lighter than the one you brought to bed tonight.